History is written by the victors, and erased by them as well. I've been studying film history because I want to be a great filmmaker. And in order to understand how to create the great films of the future, I need to understand the great films of the past. It's in my studies that I've learned that in the silent film era, there were actually many prominent filmmakers who were women.
They're basically considered types of attractions akin to going to an amusement park or a state fair. So the kind of cultural cachet of something like live theater or even opera is not attributed to film at the time, and it's also not a big business yet. So at this early stage, because of the kind of cultural diminishment of cinema, we see that many people were able to get into the film industry, actually, including many women. Once cinema becomes an established industry, we start to see the growth of kind of big business around film, and we see several companies begin to dominate the industry. Because of that economic structure of oligopoly, these companies were able to push out independent filmmakers, many of them being women that were working in the silent era. So you have filmmakers like Alice Guy Blanchet, Lois Weber, Dorothy Davenport Reed, and Dahlia Dahl that are effectively pushed out of the industry.
That last name intrigued me, Dahlia Dahl, because she's the filmmaker from this era with the least information about her. I hadn't even heard of her before this class. In fact, she has the fewest amount of surviving films of the four that my film professor mentioned. And I couldn't stand for that. Her history had been erased, and so I made it my goal to find that erased history.
Dahlia Dahl's work was more focused on fiction film rather than the kind of social realism of some of the other women filmmakers. She worked on genres associated with escapism, basically kind of trying to put images up on the screen that depicted a more positive view of everyday life rather than kind of the difficult working conditions of maybe an everyday person at the time.
The only film of hers that the university has available for screening is Walking Through a Dream, which she starred in herself, along with this other woman, Fae Valentine. The reason I mention her is because there's also not much known about her. I saw some photos of Dahlia Dahl and Fae Valentine together, presumably from the production of this movie, but I couldn't find anything else about the two of them. What do you know about her relationship to Fae Valentine?
It's an excellent question. You know, not a lot is known about their relationship, and off the top of my head, I can't recall coming across anything. We do know at least that Fae Valentine appears in several of Dahl's films, namely Walking Through a Dream, where she appears sporadically throughout the film as a kind of fairy-ish, ethereal type of character, and is pursued by the protagonist, but is unattainable effectively, and the protagonist is played by Dahlia Dahl. So that's pretty much all I know.
But I found myself to be lucky, because two people with erased histories means that I just doubled my chances of someone I have access to knowing about at least one of them. I asked around the library staff and various history professors, and I learned that Fae Valentine was actually a musician. She wrote and composed many songs also during the silent film era. While she's not known by many, she's best known by the people who do know her for her love songs, which she started writing a lot of at the turn of the decade in 1910. The music history professor I talked to actually had some of her original compositions, which I thought was incredible, and it made me wonder if they were perhaps related. It turns out they aren't, but that music history professor knew someone who was related to both Dahlia Dahl and Fae Valentine. This is David Dahl, the son of Dahlia Dahl. He donated many things of hers that were important for her history to the university, which was great. I was able to get his contact information, and he was willing to be filmed for an interview. According to him, his mother and Auntie Faye met at a New Year's party in 1910, or 1909, depending on when you start a New Year's party. He said they told him that they talked throughout the whole night and knew that they would be together forever after that, but he didn't know much more about their meeting. My film professor told me about the kinds of films that Dahlia Dahl made that he knew about from historical records, but we don't have a lot of these films. And so I asked Mr. Dahl if he had anything of his mother's lying around, maybe that he hadn't looked in for a while. To my amazement, he did. He went up into his attic and looked through some boxes and eventually found a box full of writings that the two of them had made, and a lot of films that had previously not been even known about, at least to the modern people. Lots of these things have been donated to the museum at this university for preservation and to analyze and understand them. But here I already have a few things that I can show you. For example, this footage of Fae Valentine singing, presumably shot by Dahlia Dahl, that doesn't have a name, at least not a proper one. So it's assumed that this maybe wasn't for a narrative film like Walking Through a Dream was. Additionally, we found more photographs of the two of them, and the creme de la creme. Journals, diaries from the two of them. For some reason, some of these pieces of paper had been ripped out of the books they were originally in. I'm not sure why, but they were in the box, so while the books aren't on display, these loose leaf pages are. What do you think of this new development of all of their writings to each other and many of Dahl's previously unknown films being found?
It's a super exciting development. It's it's very rare for a set of films to be found that were previously thought to be lost, and hopefully they get widely distributed, placed in some sort of archival situation where they'll be preserved. Hopefully they can be seen by wide audiences through some sort of distribution framework, whether that's showings of film screenings, or even distribution on VHS possibly would be a possibility. So it's very exciting, yeah.
These only confirmed the love that these two had for each other. They talk about how they were each other's muses. Dahlia says that Faye is not only an artist, but art itself. Their love is beautiful. I cannot find the words to describe how this makes me feel. The fact that these two couldn't share their love, even with their own son, is heartbreaking. These two women were born in a time that they weren't appreciated in. They couldn't be appreciated in. But I'm glad that we finally know their story, that their histories have been unerased, and that everyone can know of the love between Dahlia Dahl and Fae Valentine.
When Auntie Faye died, the only one who didn't cry was Mom. She said she knew, though, death would not do them part for long.